My name is Kristopher Fequet, and I'm a project manager for Steel River Group. I would first like to thank the Community Economic Development and Employability Corporation and the Canadian Rural Revitalization Foundation for the opportunity to speak at this year's conference. I would also encourage everyone to tune into Steel River Group's founder and CEO, Trent Fequet, who will be speaking live at this year's conference. I would like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of the signatories of Treaty 7, Blackfoot Confederacy, and the homeland of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Today, I will be presenting on various models and approaches we use at Steel River Group to enhance the regional economy, but also developing stronger social and educational circles of our Indigenous partners across the country. Governing bodies, whether provincial, federal, and territorial, have a baseline approach for consultation on our projects and community initiatives. Steel River Group has recognized an opportunity to improve upon this baseline using an integrated consultation and engagement approach, ICEA. With embedded cultural, social, and economic pillars guiding the process and a consistent methodology of collaboration, development, validation, implementation, and confirmation, ICEA provides a framework for continuous learning, development, and progression. In complement to this approach, we use our collective impact model to work with our partners along their path for positive social and economic change. The model is a disciplined approach to multi-team collaboration and systems change that has been proven to be highly effective at addressing an array of complex issues. Before I dive into ICEA and the collective impact model, I would first like to give an overview of Steel River Group and how we create alignment for success. Steel River Group is an Indigenous-owned, diversified management and construction consortium. The company's mission is to champion generational sustainability while actively supporting the cultural, social, and economic well-being of our ecosystem. Steel River Group's values are at the center of every decision we make. This ensures alignment within our ecosystem and creates an environment for success. A quote from Trent Fequet, our CEO, says, "We choose to care by supporting our people with the belief that the trust and respect we provide will develop the environment where collaboration and proactive accountability showcases the integrity and commitment Steel River holds to our values." Our foundation is built upon people-to-people relationships. This allows us to synergize and foster cultures of our people, while respecting and realizing the diversity, backgrounds, and their cultures. Why is governance important? It synergizes the three pillars of an Indigenous nations, businesses, and groups, consistently reminds us of our commitments to our partners, allows consistency and credibility through a cultural lens. Steel River Group's commitments to Indigenous communities. Steel River will support the preservation of cultural and traditional values. Steel River will defend social sovereignty, and Steel River will advance economic sustainability. The next portion of this presentation will focus on the integrated consultation and engagement approach and its phases. ICEA is a reimagined approach to navigate client, federal, provincial, and territorial consultation requirements while proactively collaborating with Indigenous groups in a respectful and holistic manner, to focus on cultural, social, and economic well-being of impacted Indigenous groups. Also, to build upon trust and reimagine how industry and Indigenous nations and groups collaborate throughout the life cycle of a project. Finally, ensuring that all parties walk together while not imposing upon each other. Parties will coexist in harmony throughout the ICEA phases in a collaborative, positive, and accelerated fashion. There are three embedded pillars in the ICEA approach. These pillars are cultural, social, and economic. For the cultural pillar, one needs to respect the unique history and cultural contribution of Indigenous communities, respect individual protocols, decision-making, and cultural practices, and finally, understanding and aligning vision and long-term goals. For the social pillar, it is important to understand current services and programs of the community, learn about residual and systematic barriers, understand government and political processes of the community, explore initiatives through our Steel River Collective Impact Model. Details on this model will be discussed later in the presentation. For the economic pillar, one must understand partnerships, band-owned businesses, and entrepreneurs. Learn about the economic strategy of each Indigenous community. Explore business development opportunities supported by the ecosystem. Exploring Indigenous ownership and opportunities through the Steel River P4 model. If you would like to understand more about the P4 model, please tune in to the presentation at this conference delivered by Director of Corporate Strategy, Brock Henderson. Along this consultation and engagement path, there are 7 phases which include discovery, implement the one team approach, introduction to Indigenous community, launch ICEA, synergize impacts, collaborative sessions, and harmonize. The first phase of ICEA is discovery. This stage is an open-ended collaboration session between the client and Steel River to explore the current state of the project and developing a strategy for the next steps of the approach. Phase 2 of ICEA is implementing the one team approach. Important to this phase is to get the Indigenous nations and groups along with their partners aligned on a common vision. Also, an important milestone associated with this phase is to solidify contacts and protocols for transparent dialogue amongst all parties. Steel River actively works with their clients and partners and Indigenous community groups and people to formulate a shared vision and common values for an initiative and/or project. It is important to establish an inclusive leadership group with appropriate representation of all participating parties and understand that each project and partnership is unique with their own distinctive cultures. The one team approach allows for an ongoing collaboration and open dialogue to implement peer-to-peer relationships across the project or partnership, minimize the siloed approach towards communication, planning, and problem solving, self-disclose issues and incorporate lessons learned in each interaction, discuss benefits and risks to ensure projects and partnerships are successful and transparent, identify resources available to ensure costs are minimized through efficient planning, collaborate through disciplines of varied perspectives through the decision-making process. Through this one-team approach, all parties will progress through key checkpoints and benefit from mutual success. Steel River uses the adjacent core learning framework to ensure lessons learned are identified and implemented throughout interactions. This framework is adapted as needed to ensure we capture the unique needs of all participating parties. From identifying a problem and collaboration amongst parties, they work together to establish the truth and facts and outlining possible outcomes. Through the process, assumptions are removed in order to have the most information and precise path forward, collaborating with the interested parties and executing decisions. From each decision, core learning is obtained, which is used to establish truth and facts for future initiatives. In the event of an impasse is reached on a project or partnership, participating parties will initiate a predetermined conflict management process with the appropriate communication groups. Below is a framework that Steel River uses to incorporate the one-team approach when handling concerns that may impact a project or partnership. So next we'll get into some of the tools that's used with the one-team approach. Collaboration and communication plans may be developed to support open lines of communication, peer-to-peer relationships are initiated, conflict management processes are established, and participating parties agree on common goal for the project or partnership. One of the tools used is a communication plan. Communication planning tool outlines the purpose and project partnership summary. The next section goes into details about the one team approach, strategy, and the project partnership in relation to the specific project. Information about the participants are given, following a communication section, decision making, and conflict management section, which sets up the framework for active collaboration throughout the initiative. The tool also identifies potential barriers and mitigation strategies to these areas. Another tool used is a collaboration plan, which clearly defines the project partnership scope, list of participants, goals for each participant, and a communication strategy which can be included in the larger communication plan and summarized here. Speaking of the one-team approach, Fequet describes a one-team approach instills a single sense of truth and goal in which everyone works towards collectively. Phase 3 is the introduction to Indigenous nations and groups. This is where ICEA is introduced, knowledge sharing is performed with leaders and elders, and the one-team approach is implemented with these nations and groups. Phase 4 is launch engagement. In this phase, work will be executed to implement a consistent methodology throughout the engagement process, integrate cultural, social, and economic pillars through all interactions, coordinate required studies, develop and present reports to client while consistently ensuring the nations and groups' concerns have been appropriately represented. Phase 5 is synergize impacts. Milestones in this phase that need to be achieved include develop compiled report of cultural, social, and economic impacts, develop a compiled report of impacted Aboriginal and treaty rates, present report findings to client and community leaders and elders. Phase 6 is collaborative sessions, which include exploring for cultural, social, and economic impacts, explore strategies to mitigate impacted rights, develop compiled report of strategies for client and ensure the nation's groups' voices has been appropriately represented. The final phase of ICEA is harmonize. This phase looks into assembling records, data, and documentation for client regulatory submissions, and developing integrated relationship plans for the client. We now transition into Steel River Group's collective impact model, which is a standalone model but is also used when executing ICEA. The collective impact model is a systematic socioeconomic approach that provides support to strengthen and align cultural, social, and economic goals through 5 phases. As a model to complement ICEA, our collective impact model is a holistic multi-team approach, involves active listening and knowledge sharing, considers complex topics that intertwine, utilizes untouched resources, develops a common agenda, and ensures a backbone support for the community. As shown in the figure, there are 5 phases to the collective impact model. The first is preparation, which encompasses awareness, planning, and engagement of cultural, social, and economic goals for the community. The second phase is planning, where key individuals are identified, goals are developed, and knowledge sharing opportunities are had. The third phase is initiate, which gets the community involved, develops training, and success of goals. The fourth phase is reporting, where progress is tracked, accountability is reported, and success in areas of learning are identified. The final phase is lessons learned, where success is celebrated and strategies and moving forward are issued. In summary, ICEA is grounded in Indigenous values, culture, and beliefs, embedded cultural, social, and economic pillars, a consistent method of collaboration, development, validation, implementation, and confirmation, clear and concise phases that define the approach, inclusion of the one-team approach, professional team of dedicated individuals, expert facilitators, and availability of supplemental models for enhanced Indigenous engagement. This model and approach is one of many aspects of our company showcasing our commitment of choosing to care, our core values that are woven within every decision, protecting and creating value for the ecosystem, providing sustainable employment opportunities, partnering with individuals, businesses, communities, and nations to bring solutions, competence, and capacity, deliver transparent and trustworthy services in management systems, respectful collaboration and cooperation through life cycle of all relationships. I thank you all for listening, and Steel River Group looks forward to the active discussion of ICEA and the collective impact model at the upcoming conference.